Hi everyone, welcome back to the Leading Women in Hospitality podcast. Today we have Roxanne joining us from Lamington Group. Welcome, Roxanne.
Thank you, Lucy. This is such a privilege to be on your podcast. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's really good to have you on here. So Roxanne, obviously we know each other quite well, but for anyone that doesn't know who you are, do you just mind giving them a bit of an overview on you?
Excellent. So my name is Roxanne Mongie. I am currently the head of commercial with Lamington Group. We have hotel brands called Room 2. I am originally from South Africa, if you couldn't tell from my accent. And I've been in the industry straight out of school. So right from finishing school, and it's been an adventure. And I look forward to telling you a little bit about it today.
Yeah, I can't wait. And obviously, you just mentioned you didn't start your career in the UK, so from South Africa. How did it all begin?
Yes, so it all started really because I came from a little bit of an adverse background. I was in high school, didn't know what I wanted to do, kind of had an idea. I wanted to be a makeup artist at some point, but money wasn't something that was readily available for me. We had people coming over to school to tell us about different things. And a gentleman from the International Hotel School came over and told us about being able to earn a sort of like an allowance every month, and you got to go and work somewhere, and you had accommodation provided for you, and you would study and get a diploma at the end of it. And I thought this is a brilliant idea. Went home and said to my mom, this is what I'm doing. And she was like, okay. Managed to get a student loan, and was able to go off. So I think it was not even 10 days after finishing school, I was in the Drakensberg. Only thing is, I had no idea what hospitality was. I had never stayed in a hotel before. I had no exposure to it, so I just went in completely blind. And the reason why I was there was just literally to get out of the house, and I kind of knew that I had to do something different with my life. I'll never forget the first induction. We were sat there and they were talking about F&B. And I was so confused, because in South Africa we have a bank called F&B, and I was like, I'm
A little
pretty
bit
sure.
different.
Like, why are we talking about F&B? I haven't signed up to do anything to do with banking, to find out a little bit later that they meant food and beverage.
The abbreviations and not helpful in those circumstances.
Indeed. So I started off my career really at the Alpine Heath Resort in the Drakensberg, which was amazing. I stayed in a commune with a whole bunch of other kids, let's say, 18, 19 years old, and we worked really long hours. I think my longest shift there was 26 hours straight. I think we had a half an hour break to just go and have a shower, and that was you're serving breakfast, dinner, lunch. It was what do you call it? Baptism of fire.
Yeah, so for your first role first job, I would assume, and then in hospitality as well, how did you find that? Were
It
you
was
like, what
crazy.
have I done?
There were moments. We experienced everything, right? So because we were in a resort, there were field fires around. So some of us were working in the kitchen or serving guests that were in conference, and other part of us were out in the field fighting the fires and protecting the resort. It was amazing. But I had the most wonderful experience. I made the most wonderful friends, and it was a great introduction to hospitality. I got to work in every department, from front desk, housekeeping, kitchen, food and beverage, banqueting. And in the 2 years that I was there, it was brilliant. I found my passion. I also found the place where I was absolutely able to be myself and actually excel at something. I was doing well in sort of the study side of things. I was scoring quite well in my exams, and um, I had made wonderful friends. So it was really liberating for me, going into it, and I had found my passion. very
And when you were
unfortunately off, yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
I was just gonna say, when you were doing all of those different departments, were there particular areas that you really enjoyed more than others, or not so much? Did you kind of Was it quite easy to see what you liked
I
and
was
didn't
in love
like?
with food and beverage.
Oh,
I
okay.
absolutely loved working in the bar. I loved planning events, from the organizing, but putting the tables in the room, setting up the room, seeing an empty room go from an empty room to a beautiful venue where people came and enjoyed. I actually never thought that I was going to go into sort of the commercial side of it. While I did my kitchen training, I also thought I'm going to be a chef, right? And I really wanted to stay in the operations side, but it didn't actually work out like that
Yeah, so what
at
changed?
all. Um, so yeah, so after 2 years of being there, I was unfortunately unable to continue my studies because I didn't have enough money to. And it was one of the most devastating moments because I thought, oh, I found something that I'm really passionate about, and now I can't
Mm,
do this anymore. The hotel that I was working at wouldn't take me on just as a full-time employee because I wasn't allowed to work there for 6 months if I wasn't able to finish my studies. Um, and it was devastating. It was really devastating. I thought, oh, all of my dreams have come true, and now they've all been taken away.
mm,
Um,
devastating.
I gave myself one day to cry. And then went to the internet cafe, did my CV, and walked around the whole of Durban, handing in my CV to every single one of the hotels to
Oh,
try and find
wow.
a role.
That takes
Um,
a lot of courage to do that, especially at that age.
yes, it did. And I was nervous, and I just thought, well, I have to do this, right? I've got to get myself back in. Um, and luckily enough, one of the gentlemen that I had worked with in banqueting in the Drakensberg was now at the Hilton Durban, in Durban, South Africa. And I given him a call and said, listen, I can't finish my studies. I'm looking for a job. And he was like, brilliant, come in, let's have a drink. Um, I remember he bought me a Coke and we sat there and I was shaking and was so nervous. And he said, don't worry, I'll give your details over to Evan Harrington in our front office team at the Hilton Durban. I thought to myself, to work at the Hilton? No way. It is how it is an absolute privilege. And he called me and I got an interview, and that's how I started at front desk at the Hilton. I'll never forget Evan. Evan and I are still good friends and in touch now. He was an absolute inspiration in my career.
Oh,
And that's
amazing.
where it sort of kicked off with Hilton. And I probably couldn't have found a better place to have started my career.
Mhm.
Um, Hilton is renowned for their training and the opportunities that they provide from on an international basis. And this is where my career really kicked off. I had brilliant people around me. Kate Murphy, who was learning and development back then, we're still really good friends now. Um, she saw me through all of my leadership training. She saw me through every training, actually, all the way up until I became a commercial director. Um, so yeah, so that's where it sort of kicked off, front desk,
Mm,
then to reservations, which is sort of sometimes a natural flow.
yeah.
Um, then I was promoted to reservations manager when I was about 23, which was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And then I sort of was overlooked for a revenue management role at a point, and I was like, how dare they? And I thought,
I
I
don't want to
thought
do
I want
this.
to do this. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm going to make myself the absolute expert in revenue management. I am going to make sure that I know everything there is to know. So I enrolled myself in a Cornell online university, the revenue management
Yeah.
course, and I did that sort of quietly in the background. And then when I got the certificate, I went to my GM and said, look what I've done. And he was like, okay, great. And I upgraded that to a master's certificate in hospitality. And then I went and said, oh, look what I've done. And they said, well, you did that all out of your own accord. I had taken loans to be able to do it now that obviously I was earning a salary. And they actually reimbursed me for it afterwards, which was brilliant.
Wow. Take that own initiative to go and do something like that. Where did this drive come from, would you say? Kind of, is that just a natural embedded in you to like always look to improve yourself, or where do you think it came from?
Um, I knew at that point that at some point I was going to have to take care of my mom and dad. And I made it a conscious point that my parents who gave me life were never going to be a burden to me, that I was going to put myself in a situation where I was able to provide for them if they ever needed that.
Hmm.
And that was sort of my first driving goal. I could see the opportunities that were in front of me. And I knew if I worked hard to build my career, then I would be able to build my career to a place where I was able to take care of them if I ever needed to.
Mm.
And it worked out well because when they did need me, I was able to do that and I was able
Oh,
to look after
amazing.
the family.
Yeah, just all is worth it then. All your hard work pays off. That's
Indeed.
amazing. So yeah,
Absolutely.
you've got that certificate, and then that was pretty much the start of your revenue management career, was it?
It was. So we were opening a hotel, the Conrad Dubai on Sheikh Zayed Road.
Mhm.
And I had gone to, with these certificates, gone to my general manager, Mohammed Hamza, at the time, also massive inspiration in my career. And said to him, I need more. I need to do something different. So I think I was 25. And he said, okay, well, do you want to go to the Conrad as reservations manager? And I was like, absolutely. I had never been on an aeroplane before.
Oh wow.
And now
First
I'm
holiday and work.
now I'm going all the way to Dubai. It was crazy. All set up to go. Unfortunately, my dad passed away not long after it was confirmed that I was going to go, and that was quite sudden.
Sorry.
And the big thing there was the company just all came around me, took care of me, made sure that I was okay. They gave me the time that I needed. They all fully understood and they sort of supported me through that whole transition, right?
Mhm.
Um, then got onto the flights, landed up in Dubai, and as is with every opening, there's a delay. Um, so I was put at the Hilton Dubai Jumeirah cluster, revenue cluster. Um, and I got to work there, which was only supposed to be 1 month, ended up 2 months, and I think I ended up there for 6 months. But I had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest revenue managers within Hilton for 6 months. And I realized that opportunity and I just lapped it all up. Um, and to this day, I still refer back to those people that I worked with who were friendly, welcoming, and just shared all of their knowledge with me during that time.
Mhm.
Then I got the opportunity to go over to the Conrad's Open, which was fun. Got to build my entire team, set out bring all of Hilton's standard operating procedures to life and sort of run with that. So I spent about 18 months in Dubai, which was brilliant. It was life changing. I got to meet the most incredible people from all different walks of life, all different communities, everywhere. It's brilliant. And this is the thing about hospitality, right? Is you have these opportunities,
Mhm.
and you get to make friends for life when you have these opportunities come up.
Yeah. And how was it? Obviously, like you mentioned, sadly, your father passed away just shortly before, and then you're moving to a different country. It's new people, new company, kind of obviously such an exciting time for you at the same time. But
Yeah.
how did you manage that side of it? Because I can imagine it was a really tough time for you, but a huge opportunity in front of you
Yeah.
at the same time.
So until you've experienced losing somebody in your life, you don't really realize how that impacts you, right? And because everything was running so quickly, I didn't take the time to grieve, nor did I realize that I was grieving and that this was going to last for some time. So I did, it was difficult. Only now, in hindsight, I look back and I realize, wow. it was really difficult. And I often say that I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I could have enjoyed it if I was in a perfect, if everything was good when I went over. I still
Mhm.
made the most of it though. And that there was sort of a driving decision to come back to South Africa to say, I really miss my mom. I miss my family. I want to come home now. So
Mhm.
after that 18 months, I was just like, I've done what I needed to do here. I've made the friends. I've set up the departments. We've opened the hotels. I've got this beautiful opportunity, and I've done what I've needed to do, and now it's time for me to go home.
Yeah.
Which was, and it was the right decision for me at that point.
Mhm. At least you got that experience, but at the end of the day, you needed to be closer to your family at that time. But
Yeah,
hopefully, you managed to still kind of grieve properly and have that when once you got back to your family as well.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so obviously you did so many amazing things whilst you were in Dubai. What did you learn whilst you were there? Because it sounded like you had a lot of responsibility in the end, setting up a team and things.
Yeah. Um, this is where I think I really formed my leadership style, on how I bring people together. Um, and I sort of got my reputation for building high performance teams during that role at the Conrad Dubai. Again, I had brilliant leaders working for them, watching them, every move they made, and then sort of adopting their styles and saying, this is how I want to be, this is how I want to walk the talk. And I was able to put that in practice with my team. So I managed to hire a wonderful team of about 12 people. It was 12 people from all different areas: China, Zimbabwe, Netherlands, everywhere, right?
Wow.
Russia. We had 17 different languages spoken in my team. And that is not including the 101 different dialects that one of my team members, Preet, was able to speak. So, because we just
Wow.
couldn't count them. And it was a team that was really forged on relationship, on understanding who each other were, understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses, and making sure that we all support each other through the whole opening process, through the changes that we were experiencing. But most importantly, it was about giving that team the right amounts of training to enable them to do their jobs flawlessly. And I understood that that was my responsibility.
Mhm.
Um, I gave them opportunities to support with writing the SOPs, and I put myself into a support role. It was, and I've maintained that throughout my career. It's not, I'm your boss. I'm here to push you up, to show you the direction, to show you where we need to go, what needs to be done, and help you drive your career forward. I did a fun exercise with them when we started, from a book I read, Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
I've not read it, but I have heard of it.
you have to. So when they all joined, started, there's one chapter in there called Begin with the End in Mind. So I had all of them come into the department. I had them write their reference letter, each one of them. And I said to them, you sit down now and think about what you want me to say about you on your last day here. And just to throw it in there, I will not accept a resignation from anybody unless you're getting a promotion somewhere else. That's it. And that's my commitment to you. So they all sat and they really thought about it. And I said, imagine your last day, what you wanted to have achieved, all of these sorts of things. And I had them folded up and they all gave it to me. And I said, no, this is very personal. I'm not reading it. You take it back and you put it inside your cupboard and then you get to read that afterwards. So it's not really something for me. It's more for you to set your intentions about where you want to go.
Wow. How was that received within the team? Because that's quite a unique thing to do.
They loved it. They
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. And I felt like it gained that respect with them, that I was really there to support them. And I still watch them. It's almost like having your children, right? So you watch them go off and you see all of the exciting things that they're doing, and how they're all exceeding in their careers. And I'm still in touch with some of them today, and they'll come back to me and say, well, thank you very much for that experience. And we've made friends for life. And that makes me happy. That is the real joy that I get out of my career, and moving from place to place.
Yeah, very rewarding, I bet. But and then so what age were you when you were doing this? Because you sound like you're
25, 26.
okay, yeah, so still quite a young leader at this age. So really kind of
Yeah,
just took that leap of faith and kind of just seemed quite natural to you.
it did. I did spend a lot of time reading a lot of books, a lot of time reading books that really helped me develop my career. I knew that I didn't have a huge amount of like tertiary education behind me. I wasn't qualified in anything in particular. While I had the on-the-job experience, I wanted to make sure that I was a professional at something, and was sort of, I found my passion in leadership.
Hmm.
So I also got the opportunity to go and help open the Waldorf Astoria on the Palm, which was amazing. And I got to put some revenue management experience in there. And then I was asked to come back to South Africa to help with the Hilton Sanson. And they had had some turnover, they needed some support. And I went back and again used my experience from Dubai, brought it into the team in South Africa, and sort of helped uplift that team, with looking at the people, making sure we had the right people in place, and that the people that were there were receiving the correct amounts of training and they knew how to do their jobs, but also motivating the team up. So my career has been sort of twofold. It's the expertise and the actual on the job that I have to do. And then there's the people management side, which is, in my opinion, the most difficult. Is
Hmm.
really understanding who your team are and understanding that everybody is good. There is
Hmm.
nobody that is bad. And if somebody has a weakness somewhere, they absolutely have a strength. So it's defining whether you want to support them in growing or developing that weakness, or is it that you want to focus rather on their strengths, and let them go in that direction that they're going to be able to drive their careers forward.
Hmm.
Um, because I had such great leadership around me throughout my career, and because I could see how my career was growing and I was moving from position to position and getting more responsibility and being able to impact the people around me, I understood that that was my way of giving back. So as everybody gave me their attention and allowed me to grow and be the best person I could be, I needed to do that for the people around me and support them and show them how they can grow their careers if they wanted to, right?
Hmm.
And make sure that they were happy in the lives that they'd chosen within hospitality, or at least were able to find the places where they were going to fit in the most.
Hmm. And was that quite successful for you, that approach of really trying to hone on somebody's weaknesses and making them better and their strengths already?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I've taken that throughout my career, and that is my key focus. Whenever I go into a role, it's always about the people first, right? Um, because I firmly believe that you support those people in doing what they need to do, and making a safe environment for them to be able to perform. Everything else follows. Your revenue follows, right?
Mhm.
Your success follows, because if they're happy of doing the jobs that they are doing and they know how to do them successfully and they can see the opportunities, they're always going to give you their best.
Mhm.
And I was able to do that in all of the roles that I've gone into. And again, in Lamington Group, growing the commercial department, from just a few people to now a full commercial department, supporting Lamington Group with their growth and ambitions.
Mm. And that's also a huge investment of your time, because a lot of people, I mean, we still see it, go for somebody that already has all the skill sets that they need so they can come and hit the ground running. Whereas we all know it, if you're going to get someone that needs development in certain areas, that's a huge training element to it and an investment on your time. So if you've done that throughout, that's a huge amount of time I can imagine you've invested in developing people and teams throughout your career.
Yes. Um, that time spent is never wasted because it supports you in building your expertise as well, right?
Mhm.
And if you take the time to listen to your team, you grow your knowledge at the same time as theirs because everybody has a different perspective, and those differences in perspective can create innovative ways of doing things. Um,
Mhm.
and this is beautiful
Yeah,
to
it
watch and
absolutely
experience.
makes sense, and it would be nice for that to be a more common thing. But I can say that yeah, it's not actually. So it's great to, it's really refreshing to hear you say that, and for somebody to be so invested in other people's lives as much as your own. And I think that's
Yeah.
been something that's been a clear trait of yours from when you started in hospitality, and when you was a child, probably right up to now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So you were still in South Africa at this point. So then kind of where did your journey lead from there?
Yes, so I did the role as business development in South Africa at the Hilton Santon for about 9 months, and I was able to turn around that team in that time. And then I got the opportunity to be cluster revenue manager. So my real first revenue management role, looking after the Conrad Pazula, Hilton Cape Town, and Hilton Windhoek, which were fantastic. I was traveling a lot to the cities as I was based in Santon, and then collaborating with everybody. I feel like a little bit before the online thing started. So I was doing all of my business focus meetings on Teams or Meet. I can't remember
Wow.
when it was back then. That was around about 2016, right? Which
So
feels like
yeah,
yesterday.
very early on for all of the online stuff though.
Exactly. And it was a fully remote role, although I was sat in the office. And that brought a whole bunch of challenges on because I was used to dealing with people one to one.
Mhm.
Um, and now I had to deal with people through a laptop, and I was only getting to see them. And the biggest challenge with that role was I couldn't feel them. I couldn't see their facial expressions. I couldn't see because I pay a lot of attention to people. So if I say something, I'll read their face to see if they've understood me. And if I feel like they haven't understood me, I can then go back and maybe say it in a different way or really dig deep to make sure that the person isn't just taking an order, but they actually know what they need to do.
Mhm.
And that was the biggest challenge is I didn't have that opportunity to also, once you've said something, maybe once you've reflected on it and you've seen the person's behavior, then have that opportunity to walk past them and say, hey, how are you doing? Does that make sense? Touch them on the shoulder and say, is everything okay? That was all missing, right?
Mhm.
And I really felt like I missed that. And I had to really grow my skill on st- finding a way of doing that when I didn't have the opportunity of having a one-to-one. Some of the other challenges I faced there was working for some GMs that I had three different GMs, and they all had very different styles of the way that they would like things to be done, the way they like to be communicated, their needs, their interests, what was a key focus for them in each of the properties and what they wanted. And I found that was a massive learning curve of being able to switch from personality type to
Mhm.
personality type all in one day. Of course, also going from one hotel to three hotels, it was a huge learning experience. Um, but it was successful. My properties did really well. They all landed in the top 5 in Africa and Indian Ocean for their RevPAR growth performance. There were some key tweaks that I made in the properties that saw significant changes in the business performance, and I felt like it was a very successful time. And I'd finally been able to take everything that I had learned from my revenue management sort of supporting in Dubai, all of my revenue management training that I had done, whether that had been the Cornell training or my Google what is revenue management, and reading all of the articles I could possibly read and building my skill set up from there. So
Mhm.
that was brilliant. And then my boss sent me an email saying, "Oh, haha, there's a job opening at the Hilton London Metropole, 1,059 bedrooms, 42 meeting rooms, if you want to go." And he knew I had a British passport, but am I'm a lover of sun. So I was like, I can't go to somewhere that's cold. I'll never be
Yeah.
able to live. So he meant it as a joke. Little did he know that I had Hilton London Metropole on my list of places I have to work one day,
Oh, wow.
right? And I replied back and said, I'm applying. And he was like, no, you weren't meant
What
to.
have I done? How
So
crazy.
absolutely. I got in touch with Kelly, who's still the commercial director at the Hilton London Metropole now at the moment. And I was like, I am super interested in this role. I'm in South Africa. Can I have an interview? And I got an interview with her. Again, one of the most brilliant leaders I've ever had the opportunity of working with. Um, was on the phone and we had this interview and I got off and I was like, I don't know how that went. Really don't know how that went. And then I got a call back, second interview, and it sort of progressed. And I was like, no ways. I'm going to London.
This is actually happening.
This is actually happening. So it was literally a month and I was in London. I sold up everything. Because I had put myself in a good position with my career, I was actually looking after my mom at the time, because unfortunately she had lost her job and I needed to take care of her. And I sort of sat there and I was like, so if I'm going to pay my mom's rent somewhere, I'd much rather it go into my own investment. So very quickly bought an apartment so that my mom could go and live in that apartment. Sold my car, my belongings, blah, blah, blah. Didn't have a huge amount of savings. When I moved over to the UK, I didn't have a place to live. I had a job and I had £600 in my wallet.
Wow.
And I was
Yeah.
here. I
Yeah.
also I also had 2 bags of clothes that were appropriate for South Africa and not the UK.
Not for the cold weather.
So this was a massive leap. Luckily, Kelly put me up inside the hotel for a month, um, and I was able to find a place, and I was then able to join the team at the Metropole, which put me in a commercial team that was 42 strong. I was back on property, and I was back in a position where I was able to work with people directly.
Mhm.
I was able to really impact teams, feel how they were performing, and work with them to find ways of efficiencies, improve their engagement. I had a lot of success there at the Hilton London Metropole, working with Kelly, working with Emma, an enormously strong commercial team. The team that were there when we were all working together are now directors. They've gone on to beautiful roles and they're successful leaders in their own right. And it's amazing to have been in that environment and watch all of these really talented people now grow in their careers. And just take all of the stuff that they were able to learn from all of us, and put that into practice. And now they're running their own departments. They're commercial directors in their own right.
Mhm.
One of the gentlemen actually from the reservations team, Remy, is now the commercial director at Hilton London Heathrow Airport, which I had moved on from Hilton London Metropole to Heathrow Airport as commercial director as my
Mhm.
next step. But very unfortunately, COVID came around just after I had a baby. Perfect timing.
Oh, yeah. Always the way, isn't it? It always happens at the worst time possible. But I
Worst.
think it was the case for everybody, to be fair, but even
Yeah.
worse when you've just had a baby.
Yep. I was furloughed immediately, pretty much as COVID happened, which in hindsight, although it was really difficult, because I really wanted to be in work, I wanted to see how we were going to handle this crisis, right? I have to count my blessings. I was then able to have the maternity leave that I would never have had the opportunity of having before. So I got to spend all of that time safe in my home with my newborn, and really be there with him, his developments. We were lucky enough to have a garden, so I could play with him outside, and it was a beautiful time, although it was extremely stressful and very sad to see what was happening in the world over that period. But the good news is that that opportunity opened up a space for instance, Remy to take the role of commercial director. And when I saw that post, when sort of everything became normal again, and I saw that he was there, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's one of
Yeah.
my team.
Great
That
to
are
see that they've done well and they're progressing as well into somewhere that you were just working into.
exactly. And I was like, yeah, they're in safe hands. They're in safe hands. So that it all comes full circle, right? And when you put an authentic amount of effort into developing people and developing teams, that reward is, it just comes back as you see them growing, as you see them being very successful
And I'm a huge believer of everything happens for a
for a
reason.
reason.
So, as unfortunate as whatever situations may have been at that time, it's all because there's a reason for why that's going to happen and the path that you're going to be in, and the chance of you being able to look after your baby boy and have so much quality
Yep,
time with him, which you wouldn't necessarily get. Like you said, it would have been so much more difficult should it the world have been in normal circumstances. So you have to just try and look at the positives. In hindsight, it's an amazing thing. And when you can look back, it
yeah,
actually the puzzle pieces together and you realize why certain things have happened.
exactly.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And it helps you in your life. And this is what I would say to everybody is, once you go through life, you only then realize this, right? That everything happens for a reason. And when you look back and you see how things play out and the reasons start to become more apparent to you, right now in your life, and your life is always in a state of flux, things are always going to be happening. Rest assured that it's all happening for a reason. Don't stress yourself out about it right now. Just be calm and understand this is happening and it's all going to be good in the end,
Yeah.
right? You can't control everything and things are going to happen. Rest assured it's all going to be okay in the end. And it will always be okay. There's life will present you with opportunities, and you will waste time stressing about it too much. So I remember when I was furloughed, I was like, it was the end of the world. Um, when my role was made redundant. I don't like to say I was made redundant. My role at that point
Mhm.
was made redundant, um, because that was out of my control. Um, and I was no longer working for Hilton after 14 years.
Mhm.
My
How was that?
my entire identity was I am Hilton. I am hospitality. We are Hilton. We are hospitality. And I had to then rethink and say, okay, well, who am I if I'm not Hilton? My blood was completely blue. I thought I was going to be with Hilton for the rest of my life. I committed the rest of my life to them because it wasn't just a job for me, it was something that changed my life, right?
Mhm.
Um, and now all of a sudden I'm not that, and I don't have a career with them anymore. And who am I? What am I going to do? And that took a little bit of time, I have to
Was
say.
that a scary time for you? Did you kind of what was going on in your mind at that point?
I was like, do I even know how to work outside of Hilton?
Did you have a bit of like self-doubt in there at
Yeah.
any point? Yeah.
imposter syndrome all the way. I thought because Hilton has very bespoke systems, right? I can't take my experience elsewhere because they don't use things like RNI on QPM. And how am I going to do this? How do I even know if the world outside of Hilton is a place that I'm even going to be able to be successful in? Um, while your work is always like your progression is always based on your performance, it's also from relationships, right? People seeing you, knowing how you perform, and saying, well, you know what, she's actually really good at this. And I don't have that community outside of Hilton, so I have to start from scratch again. I now need to build that up. And of course, I mean, as I'm applying for roles, people are looking at my CV and saying, oh, she's too Hilton, right?
Mhm.
And I was so worried that I wasn't going to be able to find another job. It was an extremely stressful time. I
Mhm.
actually got to a point where I was panicking so much that I was on LinkedIn all day long, just trying and applying, and I was getting nowhere. And I thought, I have to stop. I have to stop this. So
Mhm.
I decided to do a triathlon.
Okay. Sure. Have a bit of a break, do something a bit different.
Exactly. At this point, I was on benefits, right?
Okay.
I was so stressed out because I was now battling to make things ends meet. I didn't know how I was supposed to get through all of this. I was on the phone and they were telling me that here's the numbers for food banks, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
how have I built my career up to this point that I now need to go to food banks?
Yeah.
Like, and there's no shame in it, right? But it is a moment in your life where I sat there in tears for ages.
Cool.
I was lucky enough to have a support system around me, that I had friends and family dropping off bags of food at my front door, and it still makes me want to cry now.
Yeah,
Um,
on me.
without saying anything, I just get Tesco arriving, and there would be bags of food outside. Yeah, let's not.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. Yeah, I mean, no one ever should be in that situation where you don't even know where you're going to get your food from each
Exactly.
day. And to be able to have those people around you, I assume must have meant the absolute world in that
Absolute
moment.
world. Absolute world that I had. And this community came together. I think we saw that around the world, that communities came together to support each other, right?
Hmm.
And as a mom, to sit there, it's an extremely stressful period.
Of
Um,
course.
so yeah, so I decided, okay, I need to reset. I'm on benefits. There's not a huge amount I can do right now to change my situation. I need to reset. I need to take care of me. So I decided to do an Olympic standard triathlon, um, as you do, right?
I guess obviously there's so many benefits to exercise for the mind and for your mental health. I can bet that that would have been a huge benefit to you in
Yeah,
that moment when you're going through such a low point and you've got so much stress, just to try and detach for just however long you're training for.
yeah.
So as crazy as it might sound, actually I can completely understand why you'd be drawn to doing something like that.
It was also something that I could control, right? So in a space where I was unable to control so many things, I was able to control that. I was able to control my performance. I was able to control and get something out of it. So when I did my first 5K and then I did a 10K and I was back in the swimming pool and doing those lengths and getting my times, good, that I was being able to do that. I didn't actually have a bicycle. A friend found a bicycle on the side of the road and gave it to me, believe it or not. I didn't have any gears or anything, and I had my child on the back, so an extra 10 kgs or 15 kgs that I was cycling about.
Mm.
And I told somebody that I was doing this, and he said, I have a friend that has bicycles, like road bicycles, that he'll help you. And he gave me a bicycle for free, basically. And it sort of all just came together and was really wonderful. And luckily during that period, I found a job. So when I took my energy and I put it in something different, it released the space for that job to sort of find me. And actually, before I was able to do the triathlon, I was then working again in September. So
Oh,
it
amazing.
really all worked out.
You attract that right energy, don't you? I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
I would say though, and this was something that I found is a massive challenge, going from being employed to being on benefits and then getting a job again. The job was in London. I have a young child. I don't have any savings. I'm on benefits. Before I was able to start working, I needed to pay for childcare.
Mm.
Um, I needed to pay for transportation, all of these things. But so before I was able to even start working again, I was already putting myself in debt. And I found that quite difficult. Um, and that sort of kicked it off in a way that I was like, now I'm juggling being a mom and having to go to work, leaving my child that I've been bonding with for such a long time, and I've got that guilt. I have the anxiety of going back into the workplace after such a long period of time, being in front of people. I also have the anxiety of, now, are people going to trust me? Are they going to acknowledge my expertise? How do I get it across? And I found that quite challenging going back into sort of the working environment again, but also the financial stress that was there because I now call this the COVID hangover, right?
Mm.
It is still hanging over in people's lives, even though we're now almost 3 years away from it, because when you sort of start going backwards and you accumulate debt and you have to sort of try and run forward again, you're dragging all of that along with you.
Mm.
And it can be quite challenging, and it can be quite demotivating and very, very stressful.
Mhm.
Um, and that's been a challenge to overcome. But again, it's a support network, and it's really understanding that everything will be okay in the end. Um,
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that any mum seems to face is having a child and having that guilt of going back to work, but also being able to juggle work and life. And like you said, then you've got the financial side of it that comes in
yeah.
as well. Childcare isn't cheap. Um, so really tough to balance all of that. Do you think there's any particular support mechanisms or whatever you may call it, any support that really helped you, or any support that maybe you really could have done with that just wasn't out there?
Yeah. Um, you feel, and it's understanding, right? You feel bad when and you shouldn't. You should not feel bad when your child is unwell. That is your priority, but you do. And thank goodness for being able to be working online, but that juggling, it's difficult, to try and look after your child and still be successful in work. Um, your work hours in a day are not supported by the times that nursery is opening and closing. So you're from the first second you wake up, you're running towards it. And I think there are everybody could do better. I think the government could do better. I think jobs could do better at sort of making people feel comfortable and understanding that it is a lot to try and work a 40-hour week. And especially when you get to this level, sometimes it's a 50-hour week or a 60-hour week because you have all of these responsibilities, but also you can only drop your child off at 7:30 in the morning and you're picking them up at 6 o'clock in the evening. And that impacts on the amount of time you're able to focus and work.
Mhm.
Um, and then you still want to be able to give your child a good environment, good food, all of these things when they get home. And I don't feel like people should have to sacrifice their careers to be able to do that. Is there an answer to this? I don't know. It's tough, right? The world needs a little bit of a reset, in my opinion. Um, and we need to remember that raising our kids is probably every single one of us, if it's your choice, is our first priority, and everything else should actually fall in around that. And they should be the priority always. And then we
Mhm.
should still be able to fulfill our own dreams and desires, and be successful career people. Um, as while we raise our children who are going to be the next leaders in hospitality, you know,
Hmm.
potentially, or whichever career they would like to go into. So it's the long game, is raising good, healthy, competent children. And in order to do that, people like us need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and like you said, I think there's still a long way to go and still things that need to be put in place, but I'm not sure that many people have the answer to that, and I don't know what it is. Um, but I think it's important it's spoken about, because otherwise change isn't going to happen. And I
yeah,
think it needs to, because like you said, if your child is unwell or you have got to do drop-offs on certain times, what is being put in place to be able to help that? And I think probably the pandemic helped in the sense that we had more flexibility. So we've got
yeah,
remote working now, we've got more flexibility, so I would assume that would help, but that doesn't solve all of your challenges.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think as a leader, for me personally, I try and be as flexible with my team as possible. Um, at the moment, my team is predominantly women. I don't know how that happened. Um,
Mhm.
we've just hired another gentleman into the team, so it is growing.
Mhm.
But we have a lot of moms, right? And we because I'm a mom, and the ladies in my team are moms, and it would be the same if there was more gentlemen and they were dads. They have equal responsibility to look after their children, and everybody should be afforded the same flexibility, to be able to do it. And I know as a mom, I will work 10 times harder on a day where I have to juggle, um, because I've got that guilt and that stress. So I trust that my team, if they have to do something, I know that they're going to give me the energy that they need to give to do their job, because they understand that it's important.
Mhm.
And I will afford them that flexibility that they need. Or if they try and juggle too much, I'll say, listen, love, you're going to be stressed out and you're not going to be able to enjoy that time with your child. So if you have to run to a sports day or something like that, why don't you take a half day instead, instead of trying to juggle it? And one of my colleagues came back to me and she was like, Rox, thank you so much. I was able to actually really focus, on the sports day. I wasn't worried about work, and I realized that everything's not going to end with me not being there. And I really thank you for saying just take the half day, rather than trying to juggle things where I would normally have just allowed her to juggle, right? But I knew for her it would have been a better situation to take a half day, take the time to really focus on your child. And as long as we as leaders within hospitality and whatever industry you're working in, we acknowledge that and we try and be as flexible as possible, we can change the feelings around it by how we interact with our teams, and
Mhm.
reduce their stress levels. And that's really important.
And it's great for them to have a leader like you who has experienced that and knows the feelings that they're probably dealing with, and being able to make those suggestions that are going to help them, and not only be able to enjoy their personal lives, but ultimately that makes them more successful in their work life as well, because they're
Yeah.
going to be more on the ball and concentrating on the things that they need to. So it's great to have a leader like you who can kind of pass that on to them as well.
Yeah. And like they say, more bees are caught with honey than vinegar, right? So how I treat them is how they're going to treat me.
Mhm.
And if I'm too firm, and I am firm, I have to be, we have a business to run, right? But if I give them a little bit of leeway, they're going to give me their respect and commitment. And that's sort of how you build strong teams. That's how you build strong relationships, knowing that you're going to be there for those people and help them when they need. And then when everything comes to a point where you need everybody to pull together, your team will pull together
Yeah.
because they have that respect.
Absolutely. So you've obviously been juggling it all yourself. You've been training for the triathlon. You've obviously got a new role now. So yeah, tell me a bit more about kind of how things panned out from there.
Yeah, so I got the new role, went in, and again, everybody has to find their right fit, right? Coming out of COVID, got into a new job, and I just didn't feel like I fit there very well. Um, I acknowledged that immediately, and was lucky enough to find a new position, which is the position I have now with Lamington Group. It was initially the Group Revenue and Distributions Manager role. Um, and I sort of moved over to Lamington, walked in, there were doggies in the office, massive sustainability focus, which really aligned with who I was. I found a place where I was not just making money for rich people for nothing. I was making money for people who were ambitious, entrepreneurial, and looking to impact travel in a completely different way. They acknowledge the impact to the environment that construction brings, and they are saying, okay, well, we're going to build places that are good for the community, that are good for the environment. There are always going to be hotels, but let's make sure that these hotels, or what we refer to them as hotels, have a positive impact on our environments.
Mhm.
So came to Lamington Group, met some wonderful people, had the opportunity to take all of my experience from all of these years in hospitality and bring it forward to Lamington Group. So building the revenue department, showing them how we look at revenue management in hospitality. The properties were quite new and growing, obviously coming out of COVID, looking at all of the demand changes. My goodness,
Mhm.
the
Those
trend
changes
change.
happened. They changed quite a lot, didn't they? All those behaviours.
Exactly. And lucky enough, while I was on furlough um, and unemployed, I was actually on LinkedIn all the time. And I was watching videos, um, keeping up to date with market trends, keeping up to date with what was happening in the industry. So when I got back into actually working, I knew what was happening because I had made sure that I kept myself really up to date with in my community, in hospitality, on LinkedIn, and that provided me the insights that I needed to be able to bring back and support the business and run it forward.
Mhm.
So yes, so I've spent I think it's the last year and a half with Lamington Group. I was fortunate enough to be promoted to head of commercial officially on the 1st of December. And we are opening the room to Belfast in September, which has been
Exciting.
an amazing opportunity to be a part of. So, when you're working for an independent sort of hotel group, you don't have the big chains doing all of your distribution, building your systems. You don't have all of that expertise there that are sitting there. You are the person that needs to do this. So, taking my team on that journey of getting everything set up, setting up the commercial strategies, um, setting up the systems from scratch, putting things live without any sort of safety net around you. You've just got to figure it out yourself. So
Mhm.
it's been fun.
Amazing.
So coming soon, September. Is looking like sort of the opening date for now for our newest baby in Belfast.
Yeah, because say yeah, fingers crossed. We know how those openings can be delayed, so hopefully everything's on track for you.
Yeah, the team have pulled together wonderfully. A great strong team working together to sort of get this all off the ground. So yeah, very excited to have that opening soon and
Yeah,
start
will be
seeing the
good.
business.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned at the very start of your career you were in hospitality and you got an insight into all of the different parts of the business operationally and maybe not so much commercially initially. So for someone that's maybe quite early on in their career right now, what would a head of commercial be doing? Kind of, can you give a bit of an insight into actually what that responsibility kind of comes under?
Excellent. Yes. So I look after the commercial team, which is made up of the reservations, revenue, sales, and marketing. Um, I I hate the normal hierarchy. I like to flip it over, and actually, Lamington Group does the same thing. So, I've obviously gotten to a point in my career where I've worked across most of those departments, and I will lead up the team to sort of bring them together, keep them engaged, and point them in the directions that they need to go for the business to be successful. Because I started my career in reservations, I am very fond of the reservations team, and I massively drive with them that this is the gateway to the property, right? You guys are my
Mhm.
soldiers on the ground. You know exactly when something's going well or it's not. And your feedback to my revenue and sales and marketing teams is vital. Um, these are these team members work hard. Those phones do not stop ringing. Those emails do not stop coming through, and they have such a huge impact on your business performance. So really making sure that I'm focused on their energy levels, making sure that they're understanding that this is a stressful job, but it's also hugely important making sure that the quality control checks are all done for all of the reservations, because having bookings, and we know in revenue management, having bookings that are not confirmed on a busy date is not what you want, because your business will go somewhere else when it could have been locked in for you. So building a strong team there, and then giving them the revenue management's insight, because naturally that's where a lot of reservations people will grow into, is sort of the revenue side of things, but also allowing them to realize that this is a foot in the door, and you can have exposure then to sales and marketing, as well. And if you wanted to take your career in those directions, you absolutely could.
Mhm.
um, so supporting the revenue management team. So these are the data gods, looking at all of the trends, looking at where the business mix is going, and relying on their expertise to say, okay, this looks like this is happening, we need to pivot, or this is going really well, we need to maximize, and taking their information and making sure that I can share that across the full commercial team, that everybody then knows what they need to do and when, for us to all be successful.
Mhm.
My sales team are also everybody's my favorites.
Mhm.
They are the bubbly guys that go out. They are the bulldogs. They don't give up, and
Mhm.
you've got to give them the direction and send them on their way, for them to bring that business in. They always have wonderful flair. They're brilliant people to be around, and if you don't give your sales team the right information, they're not going to be able to be successful for the business. So very important that the head of commercial supports them with all of that information, taking from the sales, from the revenue team and the reservations team, and sharing that across. And then again, marketing, exactly the same thing. They are the guys that make us look pretty, right?
Mhm.
Um, so the creative side, going out to market with cool socials and PR, and managing all of that reputation and the look and feel, delivering the brand, all of all of these things, is the marketing team's, responsibility. So as head of commercial, I get to sit with a beautiful team of people that absolutely drive business in, each area. And I think I've probably called more than one team this, throughout my career. We're the money makers, right? We bring in the money and we celebrate that money, and we go after it. So making sure that everybody is well trained, full of knowledge, knowing exactly what they need to do, keeping the spirits high. It is sometimes difficult when the market isn't working the way you want it to work. You end up working 10 times harder to try and find business that sometimes isn't there. But when it is all flowing, it flows really well, and you get to celebrate, all of those hard times that you've been able to turn around potentially,
Mhm.
or yeah, maximize and sort of reach those goals and those targets. And if you don't, understanding why, and what could we have done better? What are we planning for next year to overcome this challenge that we faced this year, perhaps?
Mhm.
So it's a fun job. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's definitely a fantastic route for somebody to go down, but not necessarily a route many know much about when they think of hospitality. Revenue
Yeah.
management or commercial isn't necessarily something that would spring to mind, especially to an 18-year-old that maybe is joining the industry. So thank you for giving an overview on that. And you've mentioned, whilst you've just been talking through your career, a lot of the things that you've done that's probably helped you get to where you are now. But for somebody that is joining the hospitality industry and maybe has heard you just talk about your role and thinks, oh, I want to do that, what advice would you give to them? Kind of, are the qualifications necessary? Do they need to do them? If so, what are the best ones? Where do they go? How do they set themselves up on the right foot?
Absolutely. So hospitality is an easy place to get into, right? You can start as a receptionist, you can start in housekeeping, you can start in restaurants, wherever. It's easy to get in. And once you're in, you have the opportunity to shine. Make it your passion. m- Make make something out of it, right? So if you're working in a bar, start recording yourself making drinks, learn how to flare, find out about mixology. If you're working in a kitchen, start finding out, is all everyday life things that you can learn and perfect. You can build that experience and that expertise all by yourself. Find somebody that you maybe can ask to support you as a mentor, or read books about famous chefs or people that you would like to be like. But then, even from the commercial side of things, if you're getting into reservations and you want to take a career in revenue management or commercial supply and demand, Google. Google revenue management, buy books. You can teach yourself all of this, right? And it is a profession that you don't have to have a qualification behind you, and you can work your way up in the industry. And then as you're increasing your earning ability, you can then invest in yourself.
Mhm.
There are great charities out there that would support people getting into hospitality. So Springboard jumps to mind, right? There's internships that you can go in, and hospitality is suffering at the moment with the lack of talent coming in or lack of people interested. And I think there's still the sick stigma that it's like we're servants, or hospitality has a bad rap for long hours, hard work, all of these sorts of things. And sometimes it is, right? And I know there's a lot of people within hotels and hospitality now working very hard to change that. Um, Find a place that you want to be, find good leaders to work with, find an environment where people want to support you with growth and development. And it's entirely up to you how you face those challenges and how you rise to them, and where you want to take your life and your career. And it's all possible. Google, internet, go for it.
Mhm.
um, TikTok, I don't know, whatever,
That
focus.
is the new Google apparently, so
Exactly. Um, Put your head down, crack on. Also, if like anybody wants to have some advice or whatever, happily reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to share some advice or thoughts. It's all, yeah. Um,
yeah, and like you said there, it's great because hospitality, there isn't just one route that you can take, and people can fall down into different positions. And I think there's one thing that draws many people to it, and it is the people. And I think
yeah,
it's been clear throughout your journey the types of people that you've dealt with and the amazing things that they've done for you, and vice versa. So and you mentioned mentor, like a mentor there. Is that
yeah.
something that you've done, or are you a mentor yourself?
So I wouldn't say officially, but a lot of the people that I've worked with in throughout my career, I'm still in touch with. If somebody is deciding to make a career change or has a challenge with something, they will reach out to me and they'll say, "Rox, can I have your advice?" Right?
Mhm.
Um, so whether it's permanent, one to one, it's always there. I'm always available to help the people around me. Um, I'm always mentoring people. That is part of my everyday. So it doesn't need to be a formal agreement that I have with somebody to say I'm your mentor. No, just I'm here for you
Mhm.
whenever. Mentors, people who have taught me a lot and are my inspiration and mentors. had the privilege of working with the most amazing people throughout my career. There are literally too many to mention. And if I had to start saying names and I missed somebody, I would feel awful.
Yeah,
Um,
fair enough.
yeah, but they all know exactly what they mean to me, and I make an absolute point of that, of letting people know how they've impacted my life. Because it is important to allow somebody to know what they've done for you.
Mhm.
And we should all do that. We should all say thank you, and we should all be very grateful to the people who have taken us on different journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you've got too many that you can even mention. So that's what we like to hear. And I think definitely need to talk about this because you've spoken a lot about the people that you've helped, and that's clearly something that is embedded in you and you enjoy a lot. So, alongside everything that you're doing at the moment, you've got your new venture of helping kind of the local community to you. So, tell us a bit about this because it's very, very exciting.
Yes. So just over a month ago, I was coming back from Belfast, and I thought to myself, why am I only helping communities that I don't live in? And I live in Maidenhead at the moment, and I have done for about 7 years now. Um, and there is a lot of development that's happening in Maidenhead at the moment. A lot of people are not happy about it, understandably, because it's their hometown. They've lived here for a very long time, but it is happening. These buildings are going up, and there are going to be new people coming to the town. And I looked around and I thought, I really want to give back to my community. I have all of these years of international hospitality experience that I can share with the people within Maidenhead. We are well situated on the Elizabeth line. It's a great place to live just outside London. It takes 18 minutes to get into London. There's a build to rent coming up, so it's going to bring a lot of people to the town. So I started investigating to understand, is there somebody in the town that's really speaking for hospitality on the first point? Is there somebody in town that's bringing the hoteliers and restaurateurs together to say, what are the challenges you're facing? What are you looking forward to? Maybe connecting them with tech that will support them in driving their business forward. And there isn't anything like that at the moment. So this is sort of a me giving back in some way, coming into the community, meeting some key people, bringing people together. I have the aspiration of creating an awards ceremony for hoteliers and restaurateurs in the local community where they can be acknowledged the same way that we do in London, right? For your sustainability efforts, for your community efforts, your rising stars. Um, this then brings a whole different feeling to your job where you have the opportunity of being recognized within your community, by your community, on the things that you're doing. But then also allowing people to connect with each other and then being a connector. So if somebody's looking for ways to become more sustainable, I then bring connections that I have perhaps, or ideas that I have, to them to allow them to take their businesses forward.
Mhm. Amazing. Like there's so many exciting things that are coming up. So I'm sure people are going to be very intrigued as to what they're about to see. And it's amazing that you're giving so much to your local community. And hopefully that will be really well received with the
Yeah.
people that you're living with as well. So yeah, I guess what's next for you? What's kind of the next steps? What's going to be happening kind of in the recent or the up and coming days, should I say?
Yeah, so I am obviously fully focused on Lamington Group, my head of commercial role, making sure that the teams are sort of settled, and that they're all in the right places. We have obviously this big opening that's happening soon, so that's going to take a lot of my time and energy for the moment. But in the background, I'm going to start building up this Maidenhead and Windsor Hospitality Forum, continue to build the networks. I'm going to be working on my website, getting things together. It's still right in the beginning
Mhm.
phase of it, and I am incredibly nervous because it's obviously my own thing, and as every perfectionist does, put a lot of pressure on myself. But one step at a time. I know that it is a marathon, not a sprint,
Mhm.
and building it up slowly and successfully to really make the most impacts in the community is something that I'm really looking forward to doing.
And I have no doubt that it's going to be amazing after you've spoken about all the things that you've done throughout your career. It's really great that you've got another little baby now to kind of nourish and look after, and something of your own to be able to give back to people even more. So yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only person that's going to be looking forward to what you've got to come, and best of luck with it as well.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today and tell about my career. I live by these 4 words: live, love, lead, share. Um, I firmly believe that we need to share all of our experiences in life. Why? Because somebody may be going through something similar, and they may feel isolated. And if we share our stories and we share our experiences and we say, hey, being a mom is difficult, then other moms will be like, yeah, it is. I'm not
Mhm.
alone. Or like for me, I came out of a very abusive household where domestic violence was it was horrible, right? And at that point, I didn't know, I thought it was only happening to me. And then I started to realize that I'm not the only one going through it. And I now feel like it's a duty to say that, your circumstances will not determine the rest of your life. There
Mhm.
are people you can go to for help. You're not alone, and you can change your life. You can take yourself out of those situations and you can walk away from it and you can be successful. And that's really important that I share these, and you've given me the opportunity to share this today. And I'm hoping lots of people will see, and I hope somebody will be inspired by it and understand that, what, get up. Today is your day. Do your best, and you can change the life not only for yourself, but you also have the opportunity to change lives for other people. And we should all have that opportunity. So I hope I've inspired somebody today.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you've gone through some such terrible things. Like, it's so sad to hear, but at the same time, having gone through the moments that you've just spoken about and still been able to achieve so much, and still got up and gone and done the next thing and been so driven. And it could be quite easy for somebody to resent a lot of things and resent the
Yeah,
world for the things that you've been through, but actually the positive outlook that you have on life and the
yeah.
opportunities that it brings is so refreshing and so motivational. And I completely agree. I think the reason that I want to do these podcasts is, I don't care if only somebody takes one minor little detail from it.
Yes.
If, like you said, if there's somebody that might listen, just one person might listen and is going through a similar thing as to something that you've mentioned throughout your career, and can see their light at the end of that tunnel, and can see that somebody else has navigated through it, so can I. I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. You've told it so well. You really are an inspiration, and you're extremely motivational as well. So I think everyone can aspire to be like you, and I think you've shown that you're clearly someone that would welcome anybody that's looking for some advice and
Yeah.
help navigate through their career. So hopefully this will create a further network of you can help other people, and vice versa, just like you've done throughout your whole career so far.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roxanne. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a little bit of a longer one today, but I
It
think
has.
it's so good to talk through everything, and I wouldn't have wanted to miss any of that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant.
But yeah, we'll wrap this up. But anything else
Good.
you want to add? Any kind of advice? I think you've added lots of
Yeah.
advice throughout it, but yeah, I guess we'll end the episode there, and I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing one. So thank you so much.